Welcome to Kibbe on Liberty. This week we talk with Jason Stapleton about wealth and power, getting away from false promises in Washington, D.C., and getting it done for your own damn self. Check it out. So did you fly in this morning?
Actually, last night. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to be fresh for our interview.
That's good. It would be a rough flight in the morning.
Yeah. It's about 5 hours from 4 hours and a half from LA. So, but happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Like we first talked at Freedom Fest, and you were in the midst of the Jason Stapleton show, and it's been really successful for you. Give us a sense for how big that is.
I think we're running 15 or 20,000 listeners a day now, and if you count all the platforms and stuff that we're out on, and I had no idea when I started that show. I essentially just wanted an outlet to talk about something. I owned a company that dealt with currency trading, and so I knew a lot about politics and how central banks affect currency prices, and I kind of had my own views on the way things should work, and I wanted a way to talk about that, and you couldn't really do that in my business because that's not what people were paying me for. So I started this podcast and just said, well, I'm gonna say what's on my mind, and we started that in 2014, and we built into the election, and it kind of blew up, and I built a studio out in Kansas, and it was, I'm still shocked that it's as popular as it is. All I do really is get on there and talk about what I think is important. Yeah. And people, for some reason, listen.
Yeah, and it started off as basically a small libertarian perspective on stuff that was happening, arguments that people were having. But tell us about the evolution, because you're in the process of rebranding yourself yet again.
Yeah, I don't want to. I took a look at the show. So after the election, we were starting to build it out, and I was getting tired of coming in and bashing on politics and politicians all the time, because it's I don't know, I'm a relatively upbeat person. I'm an optimistic person by nature, and to go in and just all this negativity, I'm putting that in my brain every day. I'm looking at news and trying to find out what makes me angry, because I know that will rile the crowd up, and that's what they want to hear. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. Like what does this really mean to me? And I have really 5 basic principles that are not just political philosophy to me, but are really life philosophy: limited government, individualism, peace, tolerance, and free markets. And I think anybody who ascribes to that type of living and those beliefs, those are the beliefs that create the most amount of opportunity for the most amount of people. And I realized that a lot of my audience had absolutely no desire in applying those principles to their lives. They just wanted to come in and bitch about politics. Yeah. And so I made a decision that I was going to change the show. And so we decided we were no longer going to talk about that, and we were going to look at these principles and these ideas more of how do we begin to use them to change ourselves, and by that, by doing that, change our culture. Yeah. And I know if we can do those two things, that politics changes on its own.
So I have, you have 5 rules, I have 6. You have 5 principles, I have 6 rules, and this, of course, was before Jordan Peterson came up with 12 rules. But my joke about the rules that define libertarianism is that I stole them from your mom. Like these are not innovative, new, radical things. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. Work for it. Like these are things that your mom told you if she was doing her job, and she, by the way, stole them from her mom. And these principles go back all the way to when humans were trying to figure out how to live in peaceful coexistence. And this, of course, and I have to say this because this is how people drink on this show. This is a Hayekian principle of spontaneous evolution.
Right.
So
give them a minute.
We usually drink on this show, but it may be a little early for that. But to me, getting out of what you're describing, I would call it like the Libertarian Ghetto, like where there's this small group of people that argue about the non-aggression principle and whether or not 6-year-olds with automatic weapons on heroin should be allowed to drive.
Right.
These are the questions.
Those are the big questions of the day, by the way, people. Big questions.
And if anyone has the answer to that, I'd love to know, because I'm skeptical that they should be allowed to drive. But let's get out of that, and let's apply the things that I think are human values. They're definitely American values. I think they're human values. And I think these are values that would appeal to young people who are trying to figure out where they belong in the world. But if it's just politics, everybody goes back to their tribes and starts fighting with each other.
And that is true. And I wanted to make one mention. Every once in a while you read something or you hear something and you're like, man, why didn't I think of that? And that phrase, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff, that was the title of one of your books that I read years ago. I just remember thinking, man, that's incredible. You could wrap up my life, but really that my way of thinking in that sentence. And it's funny because when I use that, living in LA, a lot of left-wing people out there, and when they start talking about what they believe, that's the line I use. Fundamentally, this is what I believe. Don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. And it's amazing. 100 out of 100 people go, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And now we have a bridge with which to any other discussion that stems from that, I can always go back to, well, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. So, but I agree with you that the focus needs to be on how do we apply these in life, not how do we debate. There's always room for a philosophical discussion if you want to have one. I just get tired of having those because I don't know how you get from where we are now to having privately owned roads. To me, it's far more important that you create more wealth and influence in your own life, because that's going to create far more freedom than privatizing all the roads. I happen to believe that the amount of money that you have is directly tied to how much freedom you have, because you can't move, you can't go, even if you have the ability, even if it's there, like nobody's restricting you. If you don't have the money, you can't do it. And so having that is critical. It's a critical component that everybody overlooks. And I'm not entirely sure why. I think there's a sense for a lot of people that talking about money is a bad thing, or that wanting more money is evil. We're rebranding the show. I believe it's actually next week, after I get back, Wealth, Power, and Influence with Jason Stapleton. And the reason I'm changing it is those terms typically have a negative connotation with them. But there's something that I believe in my bones that you need to have. I think that you should aspire to have more power and more wealth and more influence, because that's going to make you more free. And those are not negative things. Influence has no moral compass. Power has no moral compass. You have a moral compass. And so to do that, and to do it ethically and responsibly, how do we do that? And so that's what we're really talking about on the show, and using those principles, these libertarian or objectivist philosophies that I believe in, to underpin that idea.
So I want to juxtapose that, and I want to dig deep on that, because I think that's where the gold is with reaching the audience that both you and I aspire to reach to. I call them the liberty curious generation, and they're turned off by politics. They're turned off by tribalism. They're turned off by the idea that somebody, they don't know who, decided that they either had to choose Team Red or Team Blue. But the it girl in politics today, of course, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I find her interesting. We don't spend a lot of time on this show just picking on her, even though she says some things that I fundamentally disagree with. My feed has been filled with this article. I'm sure most people watching this have probably seen this from one of their friends, and it's called "Thoughts from a Hipster Coffee Shop," and this student is considering an AOC quote that I'll read. An entire generation, this is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, an entire generation, which is now becoming one of the largest electorates in America, came of age and never saw American prosperity. I have never seen that or experienced that really in my adult life. So a member of Congress, how old is she? She's 26, something like that.
Maybe something like that. She's in her mid-20s.
Yeah, and She clearly represents, and I say this in the context of young people have never grown up in a more wealthy, opportunity-based society in the history of the universe. So what she's saying is sort of factually, fundamentally incorrect. But but she's speaking to the anxiety to an entire generation that, they saw Wall Street bailouts and they did pay an exorbitant amount of money for a college degree that's no damn good. And they're, maybe they're pulling espressos in a coffee bar. So I get the anxiety, but what do we say to people that are buying into that?
Well, a couple of things on that. The first thing is that it doesn't matter whether it's, well, let me say this first. Most of your audience and mine probably looks at her and laughs and makes jokes and tries to say, oh, what an idiot, and then they move on with the conversation. It's very, very important that you don't do that. She has a massive amount of influence over a segment of the population that feels exactly the way she does and who nods their head in agreement when they read that. Doesn't matter whether it's factually untrue or not. There's factually untrue stuff all the time, even in our circles, that people believe. It's more important to understand that there are a group of people out there who actually believe that. And I happen to believe it's because for most people, history started the day they were born. And so they don't know what it was like in the Carter administration, and to see stagflation, interest rates at 10%, inflation rates at 10%. They don't have any idea. When I got out of the Marines, I went and my very first place was a one-room basement apartment underneath somebody's garage, and I paid $180 a month for it, and it was not one bedroom, one room. And so I remember they refinanced their house out of a 10% mortgage rate down to 6%, and they'd been paying 10% on that interest rate since the 80s, the early 80s. And so there are a whole bunch of people in this world who don't know what that means, and whose perception of wealth is something that is fairly distorted. I think what she's really saying there is there are a lot of you who had greater expectations for your life.
Yeah.
And those haven't been achieved yet. And we live in a society where we want instant gratification now. And we got 25, 26-year-olds who are out of school for a few years. I mean, I have made, I don't want to brag, I have made millions and millions and millions of dollars. Millions. And at the age of 26, I was parked in my truck outside of Lowe's, bawling my eyes out, because I was flat broke, living in somebody else's basement with no idea what I was going to do with my life, no idea where I was. I just knew I wanted something better, wondering if it was wrong to leave the Marine Corps. I was in such a dark place. And now at 40, it's just amazing how far you've come. And so historical perspective, knowing a little bit is helpful, but understanding that, hey, it doesn't happen right away.
Yeah.
But back to what she was saying specifically, you have to understand that there are a group of people who were lied to. And I think when I approach it, that's what I tell them. I say, listen, you were lied to. You weren't lied to in the sense that we don't live in the greatest nation, we don't live in the greatest country on earth, or one of the greatest countries on earth. It's that you were told that this was going to be easy.
Yeah.
And it ain't easy.
Yeah.
Nothing's easy. You were told that your life was going to be planned out, and that if you just followed all these steps, that you would have the American dream. And it doesn't work like that. So it's okay. You're okay. Everything's going to be fine. Just keep moving, keep pushing, have some direction. And so when we talk about these things on my show, that's a lot of what I talk about, is you were lied to, but there's more opportunity. It is easier now to become wealthy than at any point in human history.
There's this great, and I think about this in the context of how politics corrupts our responsibilities to go out there and get what we want. And there was this great interview with Bob Dylan and Jan Wenner, I think is how you say his name, but he's the founder of Rolling Stone magazine, old hippie lefty guy, and he was worried about the George W. Bush administration. They're talking, I think, primarily about war. And by the way, you can't find this interview unless you have a paper copy, because Bob Dylan didn't give him the answer he wanted, because he ultimately said, politics is not going to solve this problem. You have to do it for your own damn self. And that's stuck in my mind ever since then, because that is the essence of the human condition. Any politician, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Elizabeth Warren, Donald Trump, they all promise that they're going to make your life better, but that's bullshit. Yeah. Like, you're going to make your life better.
That's right.
And maybe your wife and your family and your friends, they're going to help lift you up. But if you don't take the first step, don't expect anyone else to do it for you.
There's a saying, I don't know who originally said it, but the saying goes, everyone's walking around with their umbilical cord hanging out, looking for someplace to plug it in. And I find that to be shockingly true from almost everybody. None of us really want responsibility. We want to lay that onto somebody else, and we want to believe, we want to have faith that if I turn things over to you, that everything's going to be all right. And the vast majority of people in this country are looking for someone like that. If you look at, I went back and just pointed out, when George Bush was elected and they said it was the end, he stole the election, this was the end of democracy and everything, we're still here. And then when Obama got into office, all your freedoms were going to go away. And, now we're going to be living in a socialist state and we're okay. And now you've got Trump in office. Now the left-wingers are screaming that this is going to be the end. And the fact is, none of those guys matter. They just don't. I was eating for a while. I was a hired gun. I did security work in Iraq and Afghanistan, and one day I was coming down. There was a building that we all lived in on the streets in Erbil, which is in northern Iraq, and I come down. I lived in the house that had the kitchen in it, and in the kitchen they had a guy who would come and he would basically cook you pretty much whatever you wanted, eggs, bacon, that kind of stuff. And I didn't like breakfast, but I usually got a cup of coffee, and I went into the big kitchen area where all of us would sit. And there was a guy sitting across the table from me that worked on a different team. So we had teams of about 20 people, and he was on a different team. So I didn't know him very well. But I was talking with another guy that I did work with, and we were watching Fox News was on the TV, and I don't remember what they were talking about, but I remember he and I, a guy I was friends with, were having a conversation about just how terrible it was. And I looked over at this guy and I said, so he'd been really quiet. I said, "Hey, what do you think?" And he said, "What, that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, I don't care." And I said, what do you mean you don't care? Like, you don't care about our nation? You don't care about, I was confused. My right-wing brain just couldn't function in that type of thinking. And I will never forget it. He's eating cereal. He's shoveling it into his mouth just about as fast as he can, and he drops the spoon. It lands in the milk. The milk splashes out of the bowl, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Do you really want to know?" And I said, "Yeah, I really want to know." And I don't know. People are weird who do that job. So you're half wondering whether the guy's going to come across the table at you because he's angry that you're pushing him during his breakfast time. But you're not going to back down. So yeah, I want to know. He goes, "I don't care about what any of those guys do because I'm a winner." And he said, "You know what winners do?" I said, "No, what do winners do?" He said, "They win." He said, "It doesn't matter what they do. I will find a way to win because I'm a winner and that's what I do." That's all he said. He picks the spoon back up, continues to eat. I said nothing.
Yeah.
It was that is the mindset that I have and that I want everybody to have, is that none of these guys are going to fix your problems and none of them can keep you from doing what you need to do. The poorer you are, the more difficult it is for you to get away from people like that. You can look at Venezuela. Okay? The only people left there are the people who didn't have the money to leave. Everybody else is gone. Take a look at what we've done in Damascus. The only people still in Damascus are people who don't have any money. They literally didn't have the means to leave. Nobody can keep you down if you have the means to resist. And that doesn't mean just the political means. It means the financial means as well.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. And it's uncomfortable, and taking that responsibility. I sort of consider my life philosophy sort of half Ayn Rand and half Jerry Garcia, because Jerry was, of course, a Hayekian. He didn't know that, but he didn't believe in telling anyone else what to do. And Rand gets a bad rap because she focuses on individualism and she calls it selfishness. But what she's really talking about is that personal responsibility when you look in the mirror and you're like, something's not right. Something's not right with my life. Something's not right with society. Whatever it is, whatever the problem is, objectivism or at least Rand's moral philosophy, whatever you want to call that, was all about the responsibility of individualism, of freedom, the freedom to actually fix a problem. It's not actually the freedom to shrug, even though she named a book after that. All the characters in Atlas Shrugged are trying to fix a problem that's actually bigger than themselves. So I feel like it's a fundamentally libertarian thing, but anybody promises you that you're not going to have to work your ass off, again, they're lying to you.
Well, and I think to talk about Ayn Rand for a minute, when I first read I read Atlas Shrugged. I thought it was I thought the writing was okay. I thought the messaging was amazing. But when I started to study objectivism a little bit, it turned me off. This idea that the personal pursuit above anything else, and there's no real discussion of charity and helping others. And I'm not one who really believes in sacrifices. I believe in choices. Mm-hmm. I think sacrificing, using that term, makes you a victim. Yeah. It allows you to put yourself in a victim state. But I do believe in charity. But the more I started to study what I believe, the more I really find I tell people I'm libertarian. I'm really an objectivist. And I think there is a lot of confusion in people's minds between selfishness and self-interest. Mm-hmm. They're not the same thing. They're two very different things. Selfishness says, I'm going to do what I want even though I know it hurts you. Even though I know it's going to damage you. Self-interest said, I'm going to pursue what I want for my life and allow you to pursue what you want for your life. And where it makes sense, we can cooperate, and where it doesn't, we can compete. But there is, you take charity, for example. People are charitable not for any other reason than self-interest. Right? There's no other reason for it. It makes you feel good. There are people who do it publicly so that everybody can see how much money they give away, and there are people who do it privately. But nobody gives money away and then walks away going, "Oh, I feel terrible. Let me do that again. Oh, I don't want to write this check, but I have to be charitable." No, yeah. Nobody does that. They do it because it brings joy and satisfaction to their own lives. So even when you're doing good for others, you're doing it for self-interested reasons. So I think once you make that distinction, people feel more comfortable with saying, yeah, I'm going to pursue what I want. And that makes Ayn Rand's message resonate with me in a way that it didn't before.
A couple things about charity is I think localism and charity go together. The idea that you would want to help somebody or some nation or some community or some problem that you have no context for. You don't know they exist, is very different from wanting your community to prosper, your country, something that you can actually connect with, yeah. part of your context. The other thing that's sort of fascinating, going back to my progressive friends, they think there's such a thing as forcing people to be more charitable, forcing people to be more generous, forcing people to care about other people at the point of a gun. And I've never got it. Like it's a choice that you make, and it can't be a forced choice.
Well, to me, it's a form of selfishness, is what it is. For you to suggest that I think this is important, and therefore you need to give money to the thing I think is important, is selfish. If you want to take a look at Bernie Sanders, I don't. He'll be in the news. He's going to be around. I would respect Bernie a lot more if he lived his values. If he was somebody who legitimately said, there are poor people out there, we need to help them, and he was giving as much of his own money away as he possibly could in order to try and help these different charities, but he doesn't do that. He gives very little money away, and when he does, he gives it to political campaigns, not to the poor.
Yeah.
And so...
And he's now a wealthy guy.
He's now a very wealthy man. Yeah, he wrote a book and he capitalized off of his campaign, and more power to him. I have no issue with that at all. I just don't want you to stand up and claim that you're kind and generous and caring and charitable, but only with somebody else's money. That to me is reprehensible. That's the worst. Just to make it really simple.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's just pure selfishness. And when people talk to me about that, that's what I say. I don't say, well, you're being selfish. I say, well, I don't want to be selfish. And then that sparks this idea. Well, what do you mean? Well, I can't force you to give to something I think is important. If I really believe it, I have a responsibility, if not the obligation, to try and convince you to give. But I have no right or authority to demand that you do it. And so I think that all of these ideas, one of the great things about living in Los Angeles is I get to try all this stuff out on people. And so I spend a lot of time when people find out that I have some little different political philosophies, they want to talk about it. And I love being able to try this stuff out. And what I find is we are far more in agreement on what we want as people than any of us want to admit. I mean, nobody wants pollution in the sky. My sister works in China and goes there several times a year, and it's just she comes back sick every time because of the air pollution. Yep. Nobody wants people starving in the streets. Right? We all want people to be able to get the medical attention they need when they need it. The question and the problem that occurs in the delineation in ideas come from how we solve those problems. And if you can get someone to the point of understanding, listen, you and I want the same thing. Here's why I think this way will work and that one won't. That's how we change culture. That's how you really change. If you want to talk about politics, that's how you really change politics. You change it around the water cooler. You talk about charity being local. I think culture changes at the local level when people are willing to share ideas and understand how to do it. We are far too concerned as libertarian people with winning arguments instead of winning converts.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of that, because everything about charity, everything about making the world a better place gets back to wealth creation and money. You can't help people if you don't have anything to help them with.
Right. Well, you can.
I know that's radical.
Here's what I say. I say there are people with money and there are people with time. Typically, you're one or the other. And so if you are someone who doesn't have a lot of money, you can always donate your time. I have this when I have a charity conversation in some of the training that I teach people. And one guy said, I don't really know. I don't have a lot of money and I don't know how I'm barely making ends meet as I'm trying to grow my company and I don't know what to do. And I said, look for an opportunity to just do somebody right. And it turns out that he works in heating and cooling, and some woman from his church, the unit broke down, and he was able to go out and for a few bucks, all the labor for free, get the thing back on in the wintertime, and she had hot water again. And he sent me an email, and he just said, man, I don't know why I never thought of it that way, but I did it. Now, if you want to make change on a big scale, you're going to have money. If you look at it, I mean, most of the charities spend the bulk of their time trying to find people with money and get them to give it to them. And when you're a person of means, that's really what you do. I've always said I'm really too busy to show up on a Saturday for a work project, but I can give you the money to buy all the equipment, the rakes and the paint and all of that stuff so that you can get the job done. And the world needs both kind of people. And so for me, it's always been about how do I make as much as I possibly can? How do I make a ridiculous amount of money? How do I make so much money that I don't even know where all of it is? And the point of that is not so that I can drive a Ferrari or that I can live in a mansion down by the beach. It's so that I don't ever have to be beholden to anyone and I get to choose what I use that money for.
Yeah.
Because the more you give away to government or anybody else, the less you have control of. And people understand, your political leaders understand that the less money you have, the less control you have. And so they seek to amass as much of it as they can, the right, the left, everybody there. And your job should be to amass as much as you can. Money is a thing, like a car or a house. You should want to acquire it. You should want to have as much of it as you can because that provides you the most control.
Yeah, and of course the way that you phrase that would be shocking to young democratic socialists who think that it's somehow inappropriate to want to have money, but you're not talking about money at all. You're talking about autonomy. You're talking about control over your own life. You're talking about things that are sort of built into this generation. They live in a very democratized world where they have lots of autonomy.
Well, I think there's some confusion about, I think most of the young socialists out there are working from a very old framework of, the way we acquire wealth is through conquest and theft.
Yeah.
Because up until the birth of this nation, that was really how you got rich. You got rich by taking your army out and destroying somebody else and pilfering their land and enslaving their people. And that was how you grew in wealth and power.
Game of Thrones stuff.
Very much so, yeah. That's not our world. For the first time in human history, we have the ability to make a fortune helping other people. And so if there are always nefarious ways to get rich, there are always underhanded ways. There are, you want to talk about the bankers and the politicians and the corrupt companies that are going and getting special favors and special legislation that allows them to operate and to have a competitive advantage. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about you being able to go out and solve a problem worthy of being solved, and then someone paying you an outrageous amount of money because they derived far more in value from what you gave them than what they gave you. And so when we talk about amassing wealth, I'm not talking about screwing people over. I'm talking about finding a way to provide value to the world that people are willing to compensate you for.
I think this is one of the reasons why the progressive left, I didn't really see this coming, but it makes perfect sense to me now. The way that they attack the gig economy, the way that they go after Uber drivers and the way they go after Airbnb and Thumbtack or whatever those decentralized structures by which a young person can create wealth, create their own destiny, because they choose the jobs they want to work for. They don't have a boss in the sense that you and I did when we were young. They build it a la carte in a way that eliminates the need for unionism, eliminates the need for government support programs that sort of transfer that power to the middleman, the government.
Well, and take AOC's comment that you read earlier. It's clear she's angry that she doesn't have more money. Yet she lives in a nation where that's as easy to come by now as it's ever been. I mean, I remember when I set up my first website, I was in Afghanistan and I was on what was essentially a dial-up connection. And at that point, there were maybe some of your audience, they're not into this, but there are drag and drop web builders now that you could literally have a website up in 3 hours and it would look decent. It wouldn't look terrible. Mm-hmm. I can remember sitting in Afghanistan and I had like 3 browser windows open and I was looking at what's the code to change the color of the background of this website? And then I would find the code in the back office of the website and the 80 pages of code, and I would make a change, and then I would hit refresh, and I would wait 30 seconds, and then I would realize that didn't work. So then I would go back, and I would change it back again, wait another 30 seconds. It took me, it was so painful and so difficult. When I first started streaming video online, most people couldn't watch it. We were still at a stage where, especially if you were overseas anywhere, live streaming was not a thing, and certainly not on your phone. Now, good grief, you can have a website up in an hour. You can literally open your phone up and start recording and messaging and building a brand and a reputation online. That's all new, and it's all free. It costs you nothing. The phone's already in your pocket. YouTube's free. There's no excuse. If you are poor in America today, it's because you don't want it. It's because you don't have the drive or the ambition or the willingness to risk. That's the only reason. That's it. So if you're going to be poor and you want to stay poor, accept it and don't be angry, or go out and get it, because it's easier now than it's ever been.
The president's flying over as we speak.
Yeah,
no doubt.
There we go. Is that really? That's the president?
It probably is, actually.
Because can I say where we're at?
Yeah.
Okay, you're really close to the Capitol.
Yeah.
We're like a stone's throw.
We're 3 blocks from the Capitol, the Death Star, as I like to call it. We probably should be in a bunker in Idaho if we really were living our values.
I got to tell you, you being here in Washington D.C. Every time I come here, I went and walked around the mall last night. I just think the mall's beautiful at night, and it's not too humid and nasty out here yet, so it was a nice walk, and. I don't know. I have some really good memories from being here, because the last time I was here, we were filming that TV show, The Tesla Files, and I had a really great time on that. But there is just this is really the seed of corruption in America. It all kind of centers here.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that humidity just makes you feel a little sticky and a little dirty.
Well, you walk down any street in this city, and you see the largesse of big government. There's all of these special interests, and they're not ideological at all, even though some special interests affiliate with the Democrats and some with Republicans. They're all looking to get a seat at the table before the rest of us.
Right.
And this ties directly to what we're talking about, because if you think that there's a piece of legislation that's going to make your life better, you need to spend a day walking around D.C. looking at all of these alphabet associations and so-called charities that their entire job is to either screw their consumers or screw their competitors or game the system in a way that doesn't make it fair for everybody else. And I think I aspire, and I've had one of my progressive friends. I would love to get AOC on this show. I don't think she would ever do it, but the crux of the problem that they have is that whenever you centralize that much power, you attract all of these bad actors that want a piece of it. And maybe they weren't bad actors when they started, but if that's the Game of Thrones, ultimately you want to sit down with the committee chairman and you want to slip that thing into the legislation. So whatever your grandiose pretense that you're going to come up with legislation that's going to keep people from being poor.
Well, I think there's a misconception by a lot of people that their political leaders are spending their days dreaming up, how am I going to help my constituents?
Right.
I've got this burning desire to just make the people of Connecticut and make their lives better. And so what kind of legislation could we craft? What would really make a difference? And the fact is, all that legislation is being crafted by somebody else.
Right.
And it's being shown and delivered to them so that they can then put it on the floor for a vote. And if there's enough money flowing through, nobody even reads it.
Yeah.
And the more complex and the bigger it is, the more likely it is that nobody's going to read it. Nobody is looking out for you. Everybody, this goes back to this principle of self-interest, is that nobody is looking out for you. Everybody's looking out for number one. If they're going to do for you, it will be because emotionally, financially, physically, it benefits them. And so stop looking to those people to make your life better. They can't. Only you can do that.
Self-interest is a human condition, and we can figure out the way that self-interest makes for a better society, or we can try to stifle it, and all you end up doing is creating someone like Nicolas Maduro.
Yes. Well, and the great thing about the way we view the world, you and I, is that we don't suggest that you can't have a society where, from each according to his need, from each according to his ability to his need. I just really botched that, but you get what I'm saying. Nothing wrong with
it's
a
probably
socialist.
Good that you can't
that I
Marx,
can't remember it
spontaneously.
But no, it's there's nothing saying you can't do that as long as it's voluntary.
Yeah.
I would have no issue with people who really, because there is a segment of the population that really doesn't care about the money. They do their job, they do work because they love it, and they want to live in a society where everyone is kind to each other and where everything is shared and community owned. There's a group of people like that. No reason why that can't exist, as long as people are free to come and go as they please. And so what I find is that doesn't produce innovation, that doesn't produce, it doesn't produce growth. It produces stagnation, and that the Xanadu, the Shangri-La that they think that they're creating, they're truly not. What they find is that there are a host of problems that tie directly to human nature that can't be fixed.
There's actually, so I'm sort of sympathetic with people that there's a guy, I forget his name, but there's a guy in the Libertarian Party who calls himself a libertarian socialist, and he ran for chairman, and he was mostly just sort of booed because I think a lot of libertarians would view that as a fundamental contradiction. But of course the Marxist literature gets to that sort of romantic idea that you could have a stateless society, and part of it is fundamentally impossible. You can't have a stateless society without property rights, without a means of exchange, all the things that Marx dreamed of. But they at least, if you agree that force is not an option, I'm all for you letting go out and try it. And there's actually there's communes that sort of experiment on this, where the entire community doesn't act unless they agree, which basically means that the government doesn't do anything, because almost nobody ever agrees. Like
on everything.
I can't. The only reason I agree with my wife is because she tells me what to think, and I say, yeah, that's exactly what I think.
Right. Well, well, I've always said I believe in benevolent dictatorships as long as I'm the dictator.
Right.
And so I think that there are parts of our society that work really well under dictatorship. For example, corporate ownership. I would not run my company based on popular vote. We're going to do what I want to do, and I might look for input, but I decide.
Yeah.
That's a dictatorship, and that works really well for that piece. But I agree with you. I think that as long as it's voluntary, there's no reason. I've always said, I don't know if capitalism is the best system. I don't know. I just know it's the best one we've ever come up with. And it doesn't mean that modifying it wouldn't improve it. And I'm all for trying it out. So yeah, if you want to try, a little different style, or you want to try something completely new form, I think you should have the liberty and the freedom to do that. And the problem is in America is you can't step out. You can't say, hey, we want to try something different and see how this works. It's almost impossible. And that has really restricted, I think, our ability to create a freer and more open society. But I mean, that's why we talk about this stuff, is present some ideas and talk about how you can control yourself and your own destiny, rather than looking to somebody else to provide for you.
And by the way, either way, if you want to create the perfect nonviolent socialist vision that you think you understand, organizing people is a hell of a lot of work. And
you would know, yeah.
Leadership is a hell of a lot of work, and it gets back to the first principle we talked about. And I want to drill that home to everybody, no matter your ideology, whatever you're thinking about. If you're a libertarian and you're not out there working for it, you're not getting it done. So let's get back to that principle of work. Like when you're telling, my sense is that your audience is there's a lot of young people trying to figure out where they're going to go with their lives. How do they start a business? How do they get that sort of autonomy and define themselves? What do you tell them?
Well, I don't know. I can't tell you what to do with your life.
Right.
There's people who say, well, I don't know what I want to do. I said, well, you got to figure that out. Once you know what you want, I can help you get it, but I can't tell you what to be passionate about. And so what I did, I can tell you what I did. What I did, and is I sat down one day and I said, if I could do anything in the world, no restrictions, but I had to do it every day for the rest of my life, what would I want to do? I would have to be something that I could do at the age of 20, at 30, and it could also be something at the age of 80 that I could do and that I would enjoy and that I would want to get out of bed for. And then where would I want to do that at? Again, no restrictions, just completely wide open. If I could build the life from scratch that I wanted, no matter how grandiose, what would it be? And I started writing some stuff down. I wrote down my perfect day. Said, this is when I would get up, and this is what I would do very first thing. And then this is when I would go to work, and this is how long I would work for. And this is the kind of stuff that I think I would want to do during my day. And I listed it all out. And at the time I decided that the first time I did it, I said, well, I think I would like to be in the financial services business. I said, I don't know what, broker, I don't have any idea, but I know that interests me. And so starting at about the age of 30, that's what I kind of started doing. Was I invested a lot of time and effort and energy into that. And then about 10 years later, I became bored with it. And I said, well, what am I going to do now? I said, well, let's do this again. And went back through it again. And I said, I built a lot of successful brands. I enjoy helping people more than anything else. Getting an email from somebody who says, what the advice you gave me helped change my life, and now I'm in a different place than I was. I'm much happier now. I'm much more successful. Whatever it is more rewarding to me than all of the money. And so I wanted to do something like that. And I believe so much in this idea of creating influence, amassing wealth so that you can be freer, that I decided I wanted to start a business, a consulting business that basically talked about that. So I don't know how to tell people what they want because everybody wants something different. But I can tell you that it's not going to come easy, that you're going to have to work for it. But what's really work? I mean, really, what do we do? Look at it. This is work.
Yeah.
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 We're going to put this out, and a bunch of people are going to come listen to my show. My advertising rates are going to go up, and I'm going to make even more money. I literally sit in an air-conditioned studio and talk into a microphone or sit behind a video camera talking to people. I talk and I type. That's literally my entire job. I'm not out there grinding it in the fields. I'm not roofing a house in Georgia in July. I'm not doing any of that stuff. Okay? The idea of work today is so different than what it was a generation or two ago that I think, you really need to stop complaining. Yeah, you might have to work. I always said I got rich between 10 and 2. I worked my regular job, and starting at 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., that's when I worked on what I wanted to work on. That's how I built my brand and my business. If you're not willing to do that after you've been laying around in a chair all day, if you can't spend 3 or 4 hours working on your vision and sleeping a few less hours a night for a little while, then be satisfied. Be satisfied never achieving. Be satisfied with a level of mediocrity somewhere between total failure and your true potential, because that's where you're going to live along with 90% of the rest of the population. Just accept it because you're not willing to do what's necessary. Getting rich, having fame or success or whatever it is you want is a byproduct of 2 things. Number 1, knowing the cost. What is it going to cost for me to achieve this? And number 2, pay it. That's it. It's the same. Life is that way. Figure out what it costs to get what you want and then pay the price. If you're not willing to, then don't complain and cry, because we don't live in a world anymore where you're limited by your physical restrictions or, we don't have a shortage of time unless it's self-imposed. All of that is nonsense. It like I said, it's easier now than it's ever been.
And by the way, so paying the price gets you to a point where you can actually wake up because you love your job.
Yeah,
I work 24 hours a day in my mind. Even when I'm sleeping, I'm thinking about stuff, but it's a freaking joy to do what I do. But it wasn't fun getting to where I am today. There was a price to be paid.
No, I remember when I started my company, my first company, I got up at 4:30 every morning and I drove downtown and I worked until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And then I came home, I spent a couple of hours with my kids, and then I would work until 10 o'clock at night. And I did that every day for like 4 or 5 years. And people look at me and they say, well, when do you sleep, man? Like your production level is so high. When do you sleep? And don't you get burned out? And yeah, there are times when I need to take a break. I'm not going to say but I love what I do. People talk about workaholics. I do what I love every day. I'm passionate about it. That's why I spend so much time on it. If I have a choice, that's what I want to do because that's what I love to do. And that's why I say, man, when you find that thing that you need, like you need air, like you can't take it away from me because my life, I couldn't live without that thing. That's where you need to go. That's the direction you need to go in. And the amazing thing is that you can make money doing anything. You want to you love underwater basket weaving. You just start it up. We can reach the whole world. I guarantee you there's at least 10,000 people out there who love underwater basket weaving or who'd be into it, right? And so that's the trick, is figuring out what you need. And if you don't know what that is, then you need to experience some more life. You need to get out of your comfort zone and see what the world has to offer.
So give us a shameless plug. How do people get more Jason Stapleton if they're into that thing?
Well, you can just search for Wealth, Power, and Influence on iTunes, and we've got the podcast there. And you can go to jasonstapleton.com. We've got, there's lots of stuff there talking about how to build wealth and increase your own business and stuff like that. And Instagram is @the Jason Stapleton. That's where I spend most of my time. And if you want to see all of my ads that I run, you can go to Facebook, but I don't spend a lot of time there.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Yeah.
Are you going to be at Freedom Fest?
I don't know. They haven't invited me. I'm going to Pork Fest for the first time this year.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to Pork
Are you
Fest.
really? Okay, well,
I've been once before.
Okay. I've heard it is an absolute bear to get to, so I'm not excited about that. But I'm going because there's enough people there that I like that I haven't seen in a long time, and I want to go see them. So we're going to go do that. And so congratulations on the success, everything you're doing. We were saying before the show started, I thought I was busy. You have your hands in everything. You are. I think of you as kind of like a puppet master of sorts. It's just like, Matt Kibbe. Oh yeah, I've heard of that guy. But what you don't realize is Matt secretly runs the world. That's what you don't really know.
No, this is where the Jerry Garcia part comes in. I don't want to tell anybody else what to do with their lives. I'm just too damn libertarian.
You influence the world then. That's a better way.
I try to reach people, and that's what had us in common. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching Kibbe on Liberty. By now, you know this is the most important event of your week. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Click the little bell so you get notifications. Kibbe on Liberty, mostly honest conversations with mostly interesting people.